How about Missouri U.S. Senator Josh Hawley standing up for the American people yesterday? What's going on? Good morning. Happy Thursday. It is great to be here on KCMO Talk Radio. You know, it's not a bad thing. It's not meant to be an insult in any way, but I haven't really thought of Josh Hawley in a couple of weeks. No, not in a weird, creepy way. Get your mind out of the gutter. I'm just saying I haven't really thought about the guy in a while. With Tucker Carlson not being on Fox News, I feel like I don't see him as much on cable news as I used to. But yesterday, he had a moment that if you are a parent or a grandparent, but especially a parent in this world, and you're trying to navigate and figure out this current climate of social media, your kids, smartphones, the right ages, how to protect them, Josh Hawley had every, forget Missouri and Kansas parent, I believe every American parent doing cartwheels when he laid in to Meta CEO Mark Zuckerberg. And he got Mark Zuckerberg, of course, Meta owns Facebook and Instagram. He got Mark Zuckerberg to apologize yesterday on Capitol Hill during a Senate hearing to parents in the audience who say Instagram contributed to their child's suicides or exploitation. This was a Senate hearing on child safety online. That's what the purpose of this hearing was, and Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook and Instagram, was called to testify. And there were dozens of parents holding pictures of their children who were there and were expressing grief, frustrations, sadness with how they believe the social media platforms played a role in the suicide of their children, and how they felt and still feel like these social media platforms are not doing enough to protect kids. And here's what it sounded like between Josh Hawley and Mark Zuckerberg.
So you didn't take any action. You didn't take any action. You didn't fire anybody. You haven't compensated a single victim. Let me ask you this. Let me ask you this. There's families of victims here today. Have you apologized to the victims? Would you like to do so now? Well, they're here. You're on national television. Would you like now to apologize to the victims who have been harmed by your product? Show them the pictures. Would you like to apologize for what you've done to these good people?
I'm sorry. And this is why we invested so much and are going to continue doing industry-leading efforts to make sure that no one has to go through the types of things that your families have had to suffer.
You know, why, Mr. Zuckerberg, why should your company not be sued for this? Why is it that you can claim, you hide behind a liability shield, you can't be held accountable?
Well, Josh Hawley's right to bring that up after he shames Mark Zuckerberg, who steps up from his seat in this Senate hearing room. It's a really dramatic moment. I'll put it up on my Twitter page, at Pete Mundo. You can see it there. But it's a dramatic moment where Zuckerberg stands up from where he's sitting. He turns around. He looks these parents in the eyes as they sit there with, many of them, pictures of their own children, and apologizes. And he says, you know, this is why we're working so hard to protect future kids and blah, 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 blah. They're not doing enough, I can tell you that right now. Mark Zuckerberg is bragging and did brag about 40,000 employees working on safety and security at his company. He said they spent $5 billion on safety efforts last year. You know how much money Meta made in 2023? Well, just in the fourth quarter alone, they're actually going to have their fourth quarter results today, February 1st. But the company has expected total revenues between $35 and $40 billion. That's billion with a B for the fourth quarter alone. Their revenue in the third quarter of 2023 was $34 billion. That's an increase of 23% year over year. That's an astronomical amount of money. And by the way, it's America, so good for them. But to brag about $5 billion going the safety of young people, that's chump change in the eyes of Meta. Now, Josh Hawley asked a question there at the end, why should you not be liable? And I would say, well, Josh, that's where you got to get to work. You know, the dog and pony show is great. The viral moment I love, I appreciate as a young parent, but now it's time to actually get to work and to write legislation and to convince your colleagues in the House and the Senate and get it on Joe Biden's desk and make this as bipartisan as anything in this country right now, protecting young people on social media. Now, I've felt for a long time that if you're under 18, you should not be allowed to have a social media account. We know how these things are addictive. We know how the algorithms are made, so you're always getting fresh, new content. You know, it used to be back in the day when Facebook was for those of us who were just, in college with college emails, you just had a chronological order on your timeline. I mean, do you remember those days, Mark, when it was all chronological?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
The good days.
The good old days when you had to have a college email to create a Facebook account. And even in the early days of Twitter, it was all chronological. You could open up your app or open up twitter.com, and if you just refreshed it every 5 minutes, you would only see new stuff if someone new who you followed had posted something. That's how it worked. Well, the algorithm doesn't work like that anymore. The whole purpose is to keep you on the app and keep you refreshing the app and keep you looking for that next and latest dopamine hit. And listen, we're all guilty of it. I'm on a lot of these apps for work, and we all can fall for the trap. The key is to be cognizant of it. And as adults, our brains can be cognizant of it. Developing brains can't. And while, yes, it's on parents to obviously, be a parent and make sure your kids are not on certain apps or not even having smartphones till certain ages, that's up to you as a parent and putting the right, restrictions on there. I still believe this is one of those instances where the federal government has a role, where the federal government can and should be doing something about this to protect young people. We have laws for driving cars. We have laws for drinking. We have laws for smoking. And we know that the mental health impact of these apps are in large part highly negative based on how the algorithms work, based on, what these companies are trying to achieve in keeping young people and their minds on these apps at all times. So yesterday, as I'm watching Josh Hawley blast Mark Zuckerberg, I'm like, yeah, come on, Josh, let's go, baby. But then I'm also like, do something about it. Get to work. That was great. I'm glad Zuckerberg got punked a little bit, but now you actually have to do something about it. And not just have a great moment for cable news and radio and everything like that. Now, please do everything in your power to get to work. 913-408-7957. If you're a parent, you're a grandparent, you're seeing the phone's impact on these kids. And I'm not an anti-phone guy. I'm not sitting here saying that, your kids shouldn't have a phone. But I do think that these social media apps should have bans on them under the age of 18. I know that some states are trying to go this route. They're trying to make it maybe 16, I'm seeing in some places. But to me, you make it 18, it's federal, and then you wipe your hands clean and you move on. There's far more negative to come out of it than there is positive, and I believe that we're losing a generation over it. We've got those Dr. Jordan Peterson tickets in 1 hour. Don't miss that on KCMO Talk Radio. Meantime, that wasn't the only thing happening on Capitol Hill yesterday with someone notable from Missouri. There was something else and someone else that, as much as Josh Hawley had a great moment, this person had a not-so-great moment. We'll get to it next on KCMO 95.7 FM and stream us on the iHeart or TuneIn app. 4:22 to 2. There's not much that happens in our world today where if there's 425 people voting on something, 422 of them will vote the same way. Can you think of anything that would get a 422-2 vote right now. Maybe hatred for filet of fish. John Anthony would be one of the two.
You were reading my mind.
But outside of that, I can't think of anything that would get a 422-2 vote right now. But they actually had one of those yesterday in Capitol Hill, believe it or not. It was on the No Immigration Benefits for Hamas Terrorist Act. It was introduced by Tom McClintock in California. It would deem any member of Hamas, the Palestinian Islamic Jihad, the Palestinian Liberation Organization, or any other individuals who participated in or facilitated the October 7th terrorist attacks on Israel ineligible to enter the United States, even if seeking asylum. I mean, at the very... Now, listen, they could go walk across the southern border because apparently no one's stopping you, and there's no one even checking anybody down there. But this feels like a pretty obvious thing to do, right? If you were involved with a terrorist attack in any way, shape, or form, if you are a member of Hamas or any of these other organizations, Palestinian Liberation Organization, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, you're not coming here, at least not through any kind of legal process, even if you're seeking asylum. So that bill passed 42-2. Who are the two no votes? One of Missouri's finest, Cori Bush out of St. Louis. Boy, she is on a roll.
Yeah.
She is on a nice little roll. She's got the DOJ investigating her. I'll give you an update on that here in a second. And then yesterday, herself along with Rashida Tlaib out of Michigan were the lone no votes on denying access to anybody who participated in the October 7th terrorist attack. I know a lot of you in this listening audience are represented by Emanuel Cleaver. And there's plenty that Emanuel Cleaver believes and votes on that I disagree with. But you could have Cori Bush. I want to make sure that we all keep that in mind. You could have one of the most radical members of Congress representing you, which is unfortunately what St. Louis has right now in Cori Bush, who can't even get on board with 422 colleagues in the House of Representatives to say, yeah, if you're one of these terrorist organization members or you have any connection whatsoever in facilitating these deadly attacks on Israel, you ain't coming to this country. Like, that's not a hard thing for all of us to rally around. Really shouldn't be. So what they claim, the reason that Tlaib and Bush didn't go along with this is that they claim it's redundant with already existing federal law. However, this law expands the ban to members of the Palestinian Liberation Organization and anyone involved in the October 7th terror attack who's not a member of a terror group. So right now, if you're a member of a terror group, you can't get into this country. But this bill extends it to anybody who is involved and may not be an official member of a terror group. It's not like, hey, let me see your terrorist group badge, buddy. Where's that? Let me see your ID. Let me see if you got one of those Hamas IDs on you. Like, that's not how it works. So it's more about if we have any information whatsoever that you have any type of connection to an organization that committed terror on October 7th, you ain't coming here. And the fact that we can't all agree on that tells you a lot about this country right now. Now, speaking of Cori Bush, she went on with Joy Reid last night on MSNBC to talk about the DOJ investigating her. We told you about this yesterday. They are investigating St. Louis Congresswoman Cori Bush for basically paying her husband to be her security guard. Now, it's rich that the lady who is a fan of defunding the police wants to make sure that she has a nice budget for her security. Is that not awfully ironic and hypocritical to you? It is to me. So she goes on with Joy Reid last night, and here's how she defended paying her husband to be one of her security guards.
So what was happening, there were a lot of issues with us retaining just good
good staff. What was happening? We had, we couldn't pay the big costs for security like some of my colleagues are able to do. Yeah. And so we went with what we could afford. It worked out for a while, but then we started having call-offs, people just not showing up to work, people sleeping on the job. Yeah. And so it was very hard for me to have security when it was unreliable. And so what was happening was Courtney would fill in. He would volunteer. And sometimes he would even when he was there and they were working, he would say, hey, you should be standing over here. Right. Hey, you should be doing that. And so he was volunteering a lot of his time. Mm-hmm. And then we had someone who was kind of leading the group, leading the team who could no longer do it. One day just called and said, I won't be back for 3 months. Right. It left me in a position, there was no way I could manage a security team plus the work that I was doing. And so he was able to pick up that slack.
She's a real beauty.
How about that, huh?
Black people, the insurrection, racism.
Every time Cori Bush, that's mostly what I hear when I hear Cori Bush talk. I mean, the deep breaths between sentences or mid-sentence really just, they get me every time. It's
Black people, the insurrection, racism.
It's like, take a deep breath. Let's go to speaking classes together, Cori. Use that diaphragm. Really breathe it in there, Cori. And breathe it out. We're all going to make it. It's going to be okay. But that's her explaining away the Department of Justice. Remember, Joe Biden's Department of Justice investigating her for hiring her husband, who was once her security guard, because of what she claims is his experience. And on top of that, she couldn't find any good employees. You know what I often say? If you claim you can't find any good employees, oftentimes the problem is staring at you right in the mirror. Now, that may be an issue for another day with Cori Bush, but it's not lost on me that one of her excuses for hiring her husband, and whether or not there's a violation here, I'll let the DOJ do its thing, but oftentimes the problem is you. 913-408-7957 is our text line, our studio line. Speaking of our text line, I got to give a shout out here. Just got this on the text line in the last few minutes. Pete, greetings from Tampa. A good morning show is hard to find down here. Streaming on the iHeart app since my move from Kansas City. And I love seeing that on the text line. And this individual sent a picture of a America hat as he or she, I assume it's a guy, it's a trucker hat, is driving down the road with sunny skies, and it looks like the ocean, or the Gulf, I guess that would be, to his right. Oh, gosh, that looks so good. I know we're getting 60-some-odd degrees today, but that looks really good. Looking at the Gulf right there, right over the dashboard. Oh, man. Well, as always, you can stream us on the iHeart app or the KCMO Talk Radio app, wherever you are, whether it's Tampa or right here in Kansas City, as you get your morning started. Jordan Peterson tickets at 7:15. Could we get the world's first trillionaire? The details on that next. How about this? The world's first trillionaire. No, we don't have one yet.
It's going to be Taylor Swift and Travis Pete.
Yeah.
Their moms are in on it, too.
Hey, I didn't bring up their names yet this morning. You did it, not me.
Oh, were we supposed to avoid that?
Well, no.
Maybe not.
According to some
people out there, right?
Yeah.
Right. What's his name and what's her name?
That's right. According to Ray, what's his name? And I do. Okay. That's been very good from Ray Stevens. What's his name and what's her name?
All right.
But no,
duly noted.
Trust me, their names will come up this morning. I'm not going to say when. I'm not going to say why. But I'm not doing it in the 6 o'clock hour. I've gotten enough crap from some of you right now. And by the way, there's not a hot story really around them today, like there has been the last couple of days. I do have some follow-ups.
Let me find something.
Yeah, John, you find something, right? You're a top-notch producer. You'll find something for me. But anyway, this came out in the last couple of days from CNBC, and it went viral yesterday when the fake Native American Pocahontas put out a tweet saying tax the rich. Hey, Elizabeth Warren shared this article from CNBC, headlined, "The world will have its first trillionaire within a decade, but poverty won't be eradicated for another 229 years." First off, there's two sides of this report. There is the world's first trillionaire, and then there's the idea that poverty won't be solved for 229 years. Let me just put this out there. Poverty will never be solved. Human nature does not allow poverty to be solved. How many billions of dollars has this country spent over the last 60 years on poverty programs, yet there are plenty of people living in poverty? You have 60 to 70 years of data that suggests in the world's richest country, you cannot solve poverty because you can't change human beings. So leave that dopey part out of the report. The one, though, that says we'll have our first trillionaire within a decade. You know, I've always been of the belief that this is America and you can make as much money as you possibly want based on what you choose to do for a living, right? You sometimes may sacrifice income for joy in your job. I mean, how many of us do that on a regular basis? For me, I was at Villanova. I was a finance and real estate guy. And I said, you know what? I'm going to go into radio and my first job is going to pay me minimum wage. That sounds like a great idea. I did it because I wanted to do it. And I loved the potential path that it would take me on. And here we are 15 years later. So I don't have any regrets, but obviously it was a choice that I made, as do many of us every single day on what we do for a living. But like it or not, when Elizabeth Warren shares an article saying the world will have its first trillionaire within a decade, when she says tax the rich, it's a popular position. And it's gotten worse over the last couple of years. Because in the U.S. alone, billionaires are 46% richer than they were in 2020, 4 years ago, and have increased their net worth by 84%, according to a recent Oxfam report that was put out. Now, once again, it's America, but what you're seeing now is a world where people can't pay the groceries. I mean, it's amazing. I listened to Dave Ramsey here on KCMO at 3 o'clock, and the amount of, mothers and just parents in general who were like, yeah, I listened to a lady 2 days ago, and she's like, I don't know if I'm going to have to start going to the government and, asking for food stamps, and, I don't know what I'm going to have to do. And she's a hard worker. She's trying to make ends meet, but she's like, the grocery bills are out of control. Just nuts. And we were talking about that yesterday in our house, just how insane the grocery bills are. So you've got this issue. You have two sides of this coin. You have one side, inflation is squeezing everyday Americans, as billionaires have increased their net worth by 84% over the last 4 years alone. Now, I believe that's caused by the government. I believe that the way that we have consolidated power and the inability of, smaller companies and smaller people to try to challenge these big behemoths is causing this growing wealth gap. I believe the government is causing the wealth gap that we're seeing today. They created inflation with our reaction to COVID. And what did that do? It drove people who are needy into more need from the government. And then it made the wealthy, by pumping in trillions of dollars to the economy, it made them richer. And then that created inflation, which squeezed out the middle class. That's the approach that if people like myself and like many of you who don't want to see the government more involved in our everyday lives, but want to push back on this tax the rich mantra, that's how it's going to have to be done. It can't be about debating tax rates. It can't be about debating the tax code and saying, well, the 1% pay 50% of the taxes, which is a fact, and obviously I've noted on this show a million times. All that's true. However, I don't think that's going to be enough to win the argument on what is good taxing policy and how much the government should be involved when it comes to our taxes and how much we should be taxed. Because what Elizabeth Warren says is going to resonate. And the whole Bernie Sanders mentality, tax the rich, that's going to have more legs in the wake of 2020. So I'm not arguing it's good policy to have 90% tax rates. But instead of defending the absolute, inalienable right to be worth $1 trillion. It would be better off if we tried to convince people on why this concentrated wealth has been made possible by government policies that aren't working and by a heavy-handed government that is, in large part now, picking winners and losers and is not allowing for competition, which just keeps that wealth at the highest end, because that's what we're living through right now. And then I do think also when it comes to publicly traded companies, they're going to have to get their acts together, because we're seeing it way too often now where you have 7-figure bonuses and payouts right after companies go bankrupt or right after layoffs happen. Heck, there's a radio company in this town that is going bankrupt. It's not ours, thank goodness. And they did a 7-figure payout to the CEO who basically caused the company to go bankrupt. Imagine being an employee there right now. You got people losing jobs, taking pay cuts, everything else, while the CEO gets a 7-figure payout of a company he drove into the ground. That's the kind of stuff where I don't know what the government can do about that. I don't really want them involved in that, but it's a horrible look. And for those of us who have always been free market fans and have wanted and cheered on the free market to do its thing, it's issues and problems like that that make you wonder, what is that fine line? And how do we swing this pendulum back the other way to some degree? I don't have the answer, but if we don't find an answer sooner rather than later, the Elizabeth Warren, Bernie Sanders wing is only going to get more attention and get more popularity as well, because we have seen an incredible shift of wealth in the wake of COVID. And I don't see it getting any better anytime soon, because you're seeing a stock market that's hitting record numbers as Main Street can't pay the grocery bill. That is not good. And the answer obviously is not more government. The answer is less. But are people going to buy that in this climate when it's easy to say, tax the rich, like Elizabeth Warren does, and get a ton of social media reaction to it? 913-4087-957. It's our studio line and our text line, 644. It's great to be here on a Thursday morning. Mayor Lucas at 7:30. Steve Moore, former Donald Trump economist, at 8:30. He's going to be here. We'll talk about this issue and more with him. We got those Dr. Jordan Peterson tickets in a half hour. Don't miss that. Meantime, speaking of costs, what could a Chiefs Super Bowl parade cost? We've got the number, and it would be the most expensive parade yet. We'll share it with you next on KCMO 95.7 FM. Take a guess. Chiefs Super Bowl parade, if we get another one here for a second straight year. It's going to be, by the way, on Valentine's Day. That's the plans. So that's a Wednesday.
It actually is. Pre-scheduled for that, huh?
Yeah, that's what I'm seeing here. Kansas City Star says that the victory parade will be on Valentine's Day if they win. So you don't like that, John? Does that mess up your Valentine's Day plans?
No, just being a gatekeeper here for the city, it had requests on the phone here to maybe mention that and try to deter that.
Oh.
Yeah, because of that reason, because it's Valentine's Day.
I don't know. Sounds like a love story to me. Oh, see what I did there? Okay, all right.
Guess what, honey? Guess where we're going?
Yeah, we're going to the parade. Mark's all fired up about the possibility. That way he can get out of giving any gifts on Valentine's Day.
Yeah, we can just all go hang out downtown.
Yes, that's right. So Kansas City Star writes here that taxpayers will kick in $975,000. Let's round it up to $1 million towards the cost of this year's Super Bowl victory parade and celebration on Valentine's Day, should the Chiefs beat the 49ers yet again in the big game on February 11th. Now, technically, that appropriation is not official yet, but yesterday the city's finance committee recommended that the full council approve the parade subsidy when it meets today. Of course, that's going to pass. Who on the city council is going to be like, no parade. No parade. You want a parade? Go get a parade on Metcalf or something. I did see the Overland Park Police Department put up a tweet saying, hey, how about we do a parade on Metcalf? That would be great.
But the economic impact it'll have on the city.
See, Are we going to have to listen to, ladies that sell dresses at Crown Center cry that no one went to their store at the day of the Super Bowl parade like we had during the NFL draft? It's going to pass. The city always comes through on this. They always have. I mean, they chipped in, obviously, for the Royals World Series victory parade, the last two Chiefs celebrations in 2020 and 2023. That's how this goes. But the $975,000, just so you know, comes from convention and tourism tax receipts and is $225,000 more than the city promised last year for the parade. So it's a big number. Now, Jackson County put in $75,000 last year. Frank White's getting off the hook easy on that one. $75,000, the city's chipping in $1 million. But as of early this week, the county has not received any requests for funding. Now, what's this money get used for? Well, obviously, overtime for KCPD is a large part of that with the security in the parade route down the Union Station. You've got 800 members of law enforcement who worked the event last year, 530 Kansas City police officers, both on and off duty, and then 275 from area police departments and sheriff's offices. So that's a big number. Now, per the department, KCPD ended up absorbing $200,000 in non-budgeted expenditures, courtesy of the Super Bowl parade last year. So there's always money issues with this stuff. That's how it always happens. And expect more drama at City Hall if the Chiefs win. Hey, it's not our problem. But if you're a taxpayer, listen, this is not it's not chump change. It's real money that it costs to put on one of these parades. And I guess they maybe should start budgeting for this every single year. Like, as long as Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback, they should just budget for a Super Bowl parade. And then if they don't spend it, if they don't win a Super Bowl, all right, great. Then you got another $1 million lying around. Just don't give it to KC tenants and hucksters like that, and we'll be fine. Maybe put it into the rainy day fund or something like that. But you probably should just start budgeting for as long as Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes are here for a Super Bowl parade. That would be my little bit of advice to City Hall as they prepare that 2024-25 budget, which should be finalized here in the next couple of months. Meantime, speaking of downtown in Kansas City and sports teams, we've spent time over the last couple of days telling you about the Royals because they are now, the clock is ticking. We are in February, and the Royals have said that they will have an answer on where they want to be by the end of this month. And it's a leap year, so they get one extra day. We don't know where it's going to be. It's either going to be in the East Village or it's going to be at the old Kansas City Star Building. And one of the reasons I think the Star Building makes a lot of sense is I think they should drop the entire idea of an entertainment district. That whole thing where they get restaurants and bars and commercial real estate. They missed that boat. Sorry, the world does not work like that anymore. And I've got a Wall Street Journal article here that confirms it. The headline in the Wall Street Journal yesterday, the real estate downturn comes for America's premier office towers. Writes here, rents at the highest end buildings have been falling, while the rate of leasing has been slowing. Tenants have become more sensitive to costs in a world of higher interest rates and lingering concerns about a possible economic slowdown. Owners of the most elite buildings escaped this fate for a while by convincing the market they had created a new class of office tower, one that surpassed the traditional Class A building at the top of the pecking order. Well, now they're getting hit. And now you have people who are fleeing their leases, and even the highest end commercial real estate properties are having issues. So if you're John Sherman, if you're the Kansas City Royals, and you had this grandiose plan of including office space in your entertainment district, why would you do that? Why would you bother? No one wants office space right now. The U.S. only had 31 million square feet in office construction starts last year. That's the lowest levels in 15 years. New buildings will represent only 1% of inventory by 2027, the lowest in at least 25 years, according to the Wall Street Journal. We're here in corporate woods. Sad to say, there's a lot of empty buildings or a lot of empty office space here in corporate woods right now because of how COVID changed, the office mentality. There's so much more work from home. People are shrinking their office footprint. That's happening all over the country. So the Royals totally missed the boat on this. And the reality is they're not going to have the success in building office space downtown that they think they're going to have. So just bail on the whole idea of the billion-dollar entertainment district. There's no demand for entertainment downtown. Power and Light loses money, and there's no demand for office space as far as I can tell. Downtown or in any major American city right now, or even in the suburbs, which is what we're living through here in Corporate Woods. So that, along with all the other things we've talked about, could be very good news for that Kansas City Star building location. Pete Mundo, KCMO, happy Thursday morning. News coming up in a couple of minutes. We've got those Jordan Peterson tickets as well next on KCMO. Breaking news on KCMO Talk Radio. Bill O'Reilly's morning update has been canceled. What is that, Bill? I'll probably root for the 49ers. Get him out. He's done.
He's going to go home sad a week from Sunday.
That's right.
What he's going to do.
I got to get Bill on the show next week. I got to give him some grief for that. I mean, I sit on the back guy's porch the last 4 summers. We've gotten together. We've sat on his back porch. We've talked life. We've talked Chiefs. And now all those good conversations, all those good times are worth nothing to the guy. He's going to be pulling for the 49ers. And he's complaining about Taylor Swift's red lipstick. I mean, it beats Eminem giving middle fingers to fans from his suite in Detroit. Did you see that a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, we got to rescind that ticket offer you gave him to come to the Chiefs
I mean, come on. I'm offering to, go to the game with the guy, man of the people. If I showed up at a game with Bill O'Reilly at Arrowhead, I mean, he'd be the biggest star this side of Mahomes and Kelsey and Taylor, I guess. I'd be, walking around the lower bowl, and he'd be getting high fives left and right. I'd act like his bodyguard. I'd be fine with that, by the way. But at least I didn't get a Bing Crosby reference from Bill this morning. At least he kept it, 21st century. So I'll give him that much. All right. Yep, we're all waiting for this. We're all waiting for the possibility that Joe calls it quits and Michelle works her way in. And a new report from the New York Post says here that Michelle Obama has been working behind the scenes, and it's being orchestrated by Barack to try to get Joe out and potentially angle herself to be the nominee in 2024. So this report says that last summer, summer of 22, excuse me, I got my years all mixed up here. Summer of 22, she started meeting in New York City with several big hedge fund CEOs saying, hey, if I run, will you support me? And now the Obamas, per this report, are nudging Slow-Mo Joe to get out, drop out, and they can slide their way in. And they understand, by the way, that, Gavin Newsom, who's desperate. I mean, oh, my goodness. Have you seen a guy as desperate as Gavin Newsom? Holy cow. I mean, you got to find someone selling their body on Craigslist to find someone as desperate as Gavin Newsom looks to be in the White House.
Has he knocked over any Chinese kids lately?
I forgot when he did that. Yeah, where's Gavin Newsom? Doing. I was actually playing basketball in the driveway with my daughters yesterday, kind of just dribbling the ball around and going between them and whatnot. And I thought of Gavin when he was knocking over Chinese kids on the hardwood, trying to dunk on them. I'm like, oh my gosh, what an embarrassment. So anyway, they realize that he's a mess with what's happened out in California, and there's really no one else. So Michelle's starting to get the itch. Now, whether or not she does it and they can effectively get Joe out remains to be seen. But trust me, that is still very much in play here in February. Now, some new polling came out yesterday as well. And it shows, now there's 2 ways to look at this poll. It shows that Joe Biden is trailing in the majority of swing states. But, of course, some of you have texted in and you have said that in a national poll, Joe Biden holds a lead over Donald Trump 50-44. New Quinnipiac poll came out yesterday. Now, I don't care about national polls, and neither should you. That's not how we elect presidents in this country. It's obviously done electoral college, state by state. So it doesn't matter because, California has, 50 million people in it. They're going to vote for Joe by 10 points because they haven't realized, they haven't connected the dots that the same crappy policies that have destroyed their state are on the verge of destroying the country. Like for some reason, Californians can't put those two things together. I don't understand it, but it is what it is. All that matters is the swing state polling. And the swing state polling shows that Biden is trailing Trump in 7 battleground states. And that's what really matters right now. I mean, we know this thing's going to come down to Georgia, Arizona, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin. Those are the 5 states that are going to decide the 2024 election. I mean, I hate to say it, but that's really it. That's what we're all going to be waiting on. Those 5 states will determine the 2024 election. And Trump is leading Biden in the 7 swing states. And by the way, he's leading because of 2 reasons. The economy, number 1, and the immigration issue. The immigration issue is no longer just like some boogeyman that's used by Donald Trump or any politician. When you have opened your borders to 8 million people, yes, many who are just trying to live the American dream, but still, they did it the wrong way. They broke the law. And then you've got who knows how many people who have bad intentions against Americans that we don't know who they are or where they are. People are waking up to that. They're realizing that's not good for any country or any economy. It also helps potentially drive down wages for the working class. So those are the 2 reasons that Donald Trump is winning in all of these swing states right now. 51% of swing state voters, according to the recent poll that was done here that I'm looking at in front of me, trust Trump more than Biden on the economy. That's the number you need. And that's a new Bloomberg Morning Consult poll that came out yesterday and focused on 7 battleground states. And that's why all this guy needs to do, if you're Trump, is just talk about the economy and talk about immigration and talk about Joe. And don't talk about anything else. No one cares. Everyone understands you have a lot of opinions on a lot of things. No one cares about them right now. They care about the country, the future of the country, the economy, their own well-being, and they understand the guy in charge ain't making it work. It's just, holy cow, it ain't working. And they realize that, they're waking up to it, and they're not in love with you necessarily. The polling also shows that. But they certainly realize the direction we have right now is not a good one. And there's a gender gap there as well that we'll talk about later this morning on KCMO and tie into the stupidity of going after Taylor Swift in this whole thing. So we'll get to that in the 8 o'clock hour. In the meantime, we have the mayor of Kansas City, Quinton Lucas, on deck. He's going to be joining us. We got to talk about the ordinance that passed, where we're at with the Royals, and much more with the mayor of Kansas City on 95.7 FM. We all make bets on ourselves at some point in our career. Sometimes they work out. Sometimes they don't. But, man, when they hit, it can change your life. We all have them. We all know what they are, and hopefully it works out more often than it doesn't. But this, we just wrapped up the conversation with the mayor talking about Super Bowl week, the cost for the city if they win the Super Bowl, if they put on a parade, and, what it would mean to obviously win a third Super Bowl over this stretch. How did we get here? How did Kansas City get here? How did the Chiefs get here? Well, Alex Smith, you remember him, former quarterback, of course, for the Kansas City Chiefs. He went on Adam Schefter's podcast, and he talked about how Brett Veach, in particular, had his eye on Patrick Mahomes going back to his freshman year at Texas Tech. Let's roll it.
I think Patrick had just finished his freshman year at Texas Tech, and I can remember Veach coming in, and he was Brett Veach, who is now, for everybody out there, he is the GM of the Chiefs. He's huge responsibility for taking Patrick and moving up. He was in love with Patrick after his freshman year. I remember him coming in. It was a great relationship there. He came in the QB room. He's like, "You guys got to see this guy." Like that, because we would always talk ball, talk college football and different stuff. And he had his eyes on him for a long time. I'll say that. And so did Andy. All right.
That's unbelievable. Now, I used to work in Oklahoma, for those of you that don't know. So I've been watching Big 12 football for almost a decade and a half now. And Patrick Mahomes, I remember his freshman year. It was 2014, his freshman year at Texas Tech. And he wasn't starting early in the season. There was a guy named Davis Webb who was the starting. Mark's laughing. What are you laughing about? What's wrong with Davis Webb? Leave the guy alone.
One of my friends always thought he was going to be a big NFL player. And, that's why I laughed.
Okay, that's pretty funny. Yeah, Davis Webb was kind of your classic, he was a really good high school quarterback, but you realized that he was not going to be a winning quarterback at a high level in college. Never mind, who the heck thought Davis Webb was going to be worth this damn in college?
Yeah,
or,
one of my
or the
buddies,
NFL.
he's like, the Bears need to draft him. I'm like, no.
Draft Davis Webb? So Mahomes ends up starting a bunch of games at the end of his freshman year. And he didn't win a lot of them. I went back and I looked at the numbers for his freshman year in 2014. And he started 3 games in November of his freshman year, 2014. So we're going back almost 10 years now. Against Oklahoma, Iowa State, and Baylor. Now, he lost the Oklahoma game in 2014, but he threw for almost 400 yards and 4 touchdowns. No interceptions. That was his first start of his career. Then he beat Iowa State on the road the very next week, 34-31, and he threw another 4 touchdowns, 328 yards, completed 66% of his passes. And then he ended the season, and this is kind of what put him on the map that freshman year. 6 touchdown passes, 1 interception, 30 of 56 for 598 yards in a loss to the Baylor Bears, 48-46, because that's how that Texas Tech team was. They couldn't stop I hate to use the cliche, but they couldn't stop a nosebleed. Cliff Kingsbury was the head coach, and they could not stop anybody. They lost a game that year to TCU, 82-27. They gave up 82 points to, if you're a college football fan, Trevon Boykin and the TCU Horned Frogs that year. And Mahomes played in that game, but he didn't start. He completed 5 passes in that game when they lost 82-27. So, you go back to the end of that freshman year for Patrick Mahomes, and that's when the whole thing started to take off. But the fact that Brett Veach, and he mentioned Andy Reid as well, did Alex Smith, were both on Patrick Mahomes that freshman year. And then here we are, fast forward 10 years. They end up trading into the top 10 for the guy when a lot of people projected mid to late first-round pick. And a lot of people said, that style doesn't work in the NFL. We've seen these air raid guys put up big, gaudy numbers in college, and then they flame out in the NFL. They're just system quarterbacks. Brett Veach saw through it. Andy Reid saw through it. And now this team is on the verge of a 3rd Super Bowl victory in the last few years. It's unbelievable. And you know what it takes? You got to see it. How many of these, Mark watches college football a lot? I know I do. John does as well. You watch some of these guys, you can tell who's a system quarterback, and then you can tell who's like a freak athlete who, if they just kind of hone it in a little bit, they can be an absolute stud. And that's who Mahomes was from the moment you saw him that freshman year at Texas Tech. Now, would I have ever predicted this? No. But how many times do you see quarterbacks get drafted high because their teams play well? They go to Ohio State, they go to Alabama, they go to these places, they get the college football playoffs. Well, guess what? They got 5-star dudes all over the field. Mahomes didn't win a lot of games in college. He was actually a sub-500 quarterback in college, which is crazy to think, but he was. But in large part, it's because his head coach didn't know how to coach defense, and there wasn't a lot of talent around him. And that's why, guys like Josh Allen end up playing at Wyoming. Patrick Mahomes is playing at Texas Tech, going under 500. And here they are, 2 of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. So go make sense of any of that.
And now Davis Webb is the quarterback's coach for the Broncos.
Is he really?
So Mahomes can keep beating him for years.
Oh, that is a good little tidbit to put a bow on the hour. Davis Webb, the quarterback coach of the Denver Broncos. I was wondering what he was up to. I was going to lose sleep over that until someone told me. So good information there, Mark, as we approach 8 o'clock.